You think healing from a narcissistic relationship will feel like relief, like freedom, like peace. But for many people, the first feeling is something completely different. Emptiness, silence, even panic. And that's the part nobody prepares you for. Because when a trauma bond starts breaking, your mind may understand what happened. But your nervous system, it's still trying to survive it. Stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand the exact moment trauma bonds begin to weaken, why letting go can feel strangely uncomfortable, and what your body actually needs to finish the healing process. Because breaking a trauma bond is not just emotional, it's neurological and biological. Let's start with a truth many survivors struggle to accept. Trauma bonds don't break when the relationship ends. They break when the nervous system finally stops expecting the cycle. And that takes time. Because during narcissistic abuse, your brain was trained inside a very specific emotional pattern. Conflict, relief, hope, then pain again. Over and over, your nervous system adapted to that rhythm. It learned to survive inside it. So when the relationship ends, your brain doesn't immediately celebrate. It searches, it scans, it wonders. Where is the next emotional signal? Where is the next message? Where is the next moment of relief? And when nothing comes, your system doesn't always interpret that as safety. Sometimes it interprets it as loss. Have you ever noticed something strange? The moment you finally start feeling calmer, a memory appears. Suddenly you remember a good moment, a laugh, a trip, a text they once sent, and for a moment, your brain tries to rewrite the past. This is not weakness, this is pattern preservation. Your brain is trying to maintain the familiar emotional loop because unpredictability creates strong neural pathways. The brain remembers intense experiences more easily than calm ones. And narcissistic relationships are built on emotional intensity, not stability. This is why many survivors say something confusing. I know they were bad for me, but part of me still misses them. That part is not your logic. It's your nervous system remembering stimulation. And because trauma bonds are built through biochemical cycles, during conflict, cortisol rises, adrenaline increases alertness. Your brain prepares for threat, then suddenly, relief arrives. Maybe they apologize, maybe they become affectionate again, maybe they act like the person you hoped they were. And in that moment, dopamine spikes. Your brain receives a powerful reward signal. Relief feels like love. Calm feels like connection. But what you're actually experiencing is the end of stress. And your brain starts associating that relief with the person. That's how trauma bonding forms, not through safety, through contrast. Now here's where the breaking process begins. The trauma bond starts weakening the moment the nervous system stops receiving unpredictable rewards. When there are no more emotional spikes, no more reconciliation phases, no more sudden affection after conflict, the dopamine cycle begins to fade, but this doesn't feel good immediately. In fact, it often feels dull, flat, even boring, because your nervous system was used to intensity and now it's learning calm again. Think of it like stepping off a roller coaster. Your body was moving fast for so long that standing still feels strange. Your equilibrium needs time to reset. The same thing happens in your nervous system. For months, sometimes years, your brain was navigating emotional highs and lows. Now suddenly, there is quiet, and quiet exposes exhaustion. This is why many survivors experience something unexpected during healing. Fatigue, deep fatigue. You're not just recovering from heartbreak, you're recovering from chronic stress. Long-term emotional stress changes the body's chemistry. Cortisol rhythm shift. Sleep cycles become lighter. blood sugar regulation becomes unstable. Even digestion can weaken. Your body has been spending enormous energy just staying alert. So when the relationship finally ends, your system doesn't immediately relax. It collapses into recovery mode. And that can feel like emotional emptiness, but it's actually repair. If this feels familiar, stay with me. The next part will make this even clearer. Because understanding what's happening inside your body can completely change how you see this phase. Right now, your nervous system is trying to learn a new baseline. One without constant emotional stimulation, one without hypervigilance. And that requires biological support. Because trauma bonding isn't only psychological, it's metabolic. Stress burns nutrients. Adrenal activation consumes magnesium. Chronic cortisol depletes B vitamins. Inflammation increases when stress becomes prolonged. So when survivors try to move on emotionally, their bodies are sometimes still depleted. And depletion amplifies rumination. Low magnesium can intensify anxiety. Blood sugar crashes can trigger emotional spirals. Poor sleep prolongs cortisol activation, which means healing trauma bonding requires more than just time. It requires regulation. Let's talk about something powerful. When trauma bonds begin to break, your brain needs new sources of dopamine, but safe ones. Healthy dopamine sources include sunlight, exposure movement, creative expression, learning new skills, deep friendships, small achievements. These signals teach the brain that stimulation doesn't have to come from chaos. It can come from life. Slowly, your reward system recalibrates. Your brain begins associating calm with safety again. And that's the moment real detachment starts forming. Not forced, not intellectual, biological, but there's another moment in the healing process that almost nobody talks about. And when it happens, it can feel incredibly confusing because one day something small changes. You see their name somewhere, a photo, a message thread you forgot to delete. And instead of feeling that familiar emotional pull, you feel neutral, not angry, not nostalgic, just distant. For many survivors, that moment feels strange, almost unsettling. Because the intensity that once controlled your emotions is suddenly gone. And your brain doesn't quite know what to do with that silence. You might even wonder, why don't I feel anything? But that emotional quiet isn't emptiness. It's neurological recovery. Your nervous system is no longer reacting automatically. The emotional trigger lost its power. And that's one of the clearest signals that a trauma bond is weakening. Because trauma bonds rely on reaction. Strong reactions, emotional spikes, internal chaos. When the reaction disappears, the bond begins dissolving. And here's something even more fascinating. Often the moment trauma bonds weaken, your brain begins remembering the relationship differently. The fog starts lifting. Details you once minimized suddenly become clearer. Things you excused begin making less sense. You start seeing patterns you couldn't see before. This isn't bitterness. This is cognitive clarity returning. During chronic emotional stress, your brain prioritizes survival. It suppresses certain observations to keep you connected. But when safety returns, your prefrontal cortex becomes more active again. And with it comes perspective. Suddenly, the relationship looks less like love and more like a cycle. That realization can feel sobering, but it's also empowering because it means your brain is no longer trying to preserve the bond. It's trying to understand it. And understanding is what ultimately breaks the cycle. Not force, not willpower, awareness, your nervous system calming, your brain regaining clarity, and your body realizing it no longer needs to survive that environment. That's when the final phase of detachment begins, quietly, gradually, but very real. There's another emotional layer to this process that deserves compassion. Many survivors grieve not just the person, but the version of themselves that existed in that relationship, the hopeful version, the patient version, the one who believed things would eventually change. Letting go sometimes feels like abandoning that hope. And that can feel heavy, but here's something important to remember. Hope kept you connected when you needed to survive. Now clarity is helping you heal. Both served a purpose. Breaking a trauma bond is not a single moment. It's a series of small shifts. The day you realize you didn't think about them all morning, the moment their name appears and your chest doesn't tighten, the first night you sleep deeply again. These moments seem small, but neurologically, they represent a rewiring. New pathways forming, old loops weakening, your brain learning safety again. And here's the most beautiful part of that process. The more regulated your nervous system becomes, the less appealing chaos feels. The intensity that once felt magnetic begins to feel exhausting. Drama loses its pull. Silence begins to feel peaceful instead of empty. And one day, you realize something quietly powerful. You're not trying to stop thinking about them anymore. You simply don't need the pattern. Your nervous system moved on before your mind even noticed. If this video helped you understand your body in a new way, subscribe. Because this channel isn't just about leaving toxic relationships, it's about rebuilding the nervous system after them. And if you're going through this process right now, tell me in the comments, what feels hardest lately? The silence, the memories, or the emotional fatigue? You're not alone in that experience. Thousands of people healing from narcissistic abuse go through the same biological process. And understanding it changes everything. Share this video with someone who thinks they're just weak for missing someone who hurt them. They're not weak, they're healing. Now let me leave you with this. You didn't just leave a relationship, your body left a survival pattern. And survival patterns take time to unwind. But they do unwind. Slowly, gently, and with the right support, completely. You survived the relationship. Here, we help you survive it too.